So before we discuss our current constitution, we have to discuss the catastrophe that is the Articles of Confederation.
I'm surprised you were even able to survive, seeing as the Articles of Confederation was kept for 11 whole years, from 1776 to 1787.
It was imbalanced because the federal government had very little power, while each individual state had a lot more power. Before they were 13 states, they were 13 colonies under King George III. Under his reign, they had literally zero power. After having escaped his control and gaining independence, they didn't want to repeat that same mistake of giving the federal government, or the king, too much power. However, they sort of overdid it and gave themselves too much power and the federal government too little power.
On to the more complicated problems.
For example,
Problem 1, there was no president. But judging by who we have as the president currently, some may argue that wasn't so bad. Either way, the issue with not having a president was that there was no one to make quick executive decisions in emergency situations.
Like, if we were invaded by aliens or something, or if there was a natural disaster, like me, there wouldn't be enough time to vote on what we should do, because if you didn't know already, the states had different values and will basically argue to the death about making sure they get their way.
Back then, there was only a legislative branch under the Articles of Confederation, as opposed to now, where we have a judicial, executive, and legislative branch, but we'll get back to that later.
Problem 2, there was no national army. Sure, there were state militias that protected each of 13 individual states, but if there were an invasion from another country, there wouldn't be enough soldiers to defend.
The United States was a fairly new country after being able to separate themselves from the British, meaning that the US was, well, weak. If the British invaded to try and take back their colonies, the states would pretty much lose.
besides,
If a state needed assistance from other state militias, it would take way too long to get the message across, because letters had to be transported on foot. On top of that, the other states aren't even required to send a militia over.
It gets worse from there. Problem 3 was that the US didn't have a federal court system. There were only state courts.
The problem with this is that if there's a dispute between two people from different states, or two different states, there's no neutral court to settle things.
The defendants would have wanted to settle the dispute in their own state because that person or state would most likely win due to their court system being biased in favor of them.
well, why not just pass laws or make amendments in the Articles of Confederation?
Well, to pass laws in the Articles of Confederation, you needed 9 out of 13 states to agree, which is known as a supermajority. It was difficult to meet this requirement at the time because each state had different values and viewpoints.
What about the amendments? Can't they just change the requirements?
Too late. They made it impossible on themselves. It was already difficult to get 9 out of 13 states to agree. Now, to make amendments, you needed all 13 states to agree. There was no way the Articles of Confederation would have worked out in the end with all these flaws.
And that's exactly what the founding fathers, the men who penned the Articles of Confederation, thought. This is where the Constitutional Convention comes into play.